you signed a law in May that bans abortion after a fetal heartbeat can be detected around 6 weeks. And there is no exception in that law for either rape or incest. Here's what you said when you signed the law.
Goal number one in the state of Texas is to eliminate rape so that no woman, no person will be a victim of rape.
Now, in 2019, which is the last year that we have numbers for, almost 15,000 cases of rape were reported in your state of Texas, and almost everyone says that that's a severe undercount. There are a lot more cases that just aren't reported. Is it reasonable to say to somebody who is the victim of rape and might not understand that they are pregnant, until 6 weeks, well, don't worry about it because we're going to eliminate rape as a problem in the state of Texas?
Well, there's multiple things I have to say in answer to this, but the first thing, obviously, is that survivors of sexual assault, they deserve support, care, and compassion. And Texas is stepping up to make sure that we provide that by signing a law and creating in the governor's office a sexual assault survivors task force. But separately from that, Chris, I got to point out about the ways that I have fought to to arrest and apprehend and try to eliminate rape. I sought the death penalty.
But Governor, excuse me, because we are running out of time. There were more than 15,000 rapes in 2019 when you were governor. Let me just ask this question. A state representative, Republican state representative, says that he's going to offer a new measure that would restore the exception to the Texas abortion law for victims of rape and incest. If that came to your desk, will you sign it or not?
Well, we got to go back, Chris, to what the reason was why the law was passed in the first place. And the goal is to protect the lives of every child with a heartbeat. And so we're working to achieve that goal. Chris, I got to point this out,
including
Chris,
the child of a rape.
This goal is consistent with what the United States Supreme Court has written, and that is states have the ability to make sure that we protect the health and safety of both the mother and the child, and that's what we are seeking to do here. And I have to add this, and that is Texas just provided more than $100 million in funding for pregnancy centers across the state of Texas to help those who want to make sure that they will be able to carry a child.
Just to lock this down, are you saying, sir, I don't mean to interrupt, but are you saying that you will not sign an exception for rape and incest?
Well, first, I got to tell you, Chris, you're making a hypothetical that it's not going to happen because that bill is not going to reach my desk. But second, again, the goal is to protect the life of every child with a heartbeat.
First off, in response to Chris Wallace's question about the usefulness of telling a rape victim, don't worry, we're going to get rid of all rapists, Abbott says that survivors of sexual assault deserve support, care, and compassion. And so they're creating a sexual assault survivors task force, which amazingly just proves the very point that Chris Wallace was making. How is a task force going to help the woman who was just raped and is now being forced to carry that rapist baby to term? You'd think she was like, I really don't want to have to carry my rapist baby for 9 months, but now that there's a task force, I'm completely vindicated. I mean, give me a break. Abbott then digs in even further on the same question, which I should remind you is asking how him vowing to eliminate rapists is actually going to help rape victims, and the guy actually, without a shred of irony, dives right back into his talking points about eliminating rape. First of all, you can't eliminate rape, period. You can't eliminate a crime before that crime happens. There is no way to preemptively stop rape from occurring. Second of all, if there was a way to eliminate rape, which again, there isn't, then don't you think Abbott would have tried that already? Don't you think anyone would have tried that already? This whole completely absurd talking point would then suggest that Abbott somehow had a way to eliminate rape before, but never bothered to do it. And so that would beg the question, why not? Abbott's promises to eliminate rape now suggest that he consciously decided to allow rape in the past. So using his own logic, is he suggesting that he actually let rape occur thus far in the state of Texas? But it gets even more ridiculous as Abbott then goes on to invoke the Supreme Court, saying that they've written that both the mother and the child should be protected, which, so that we're clear, might be what he wanted to hear from the Supreme Court, but is decidedly not what the Supreme Court says. In Roe v. Wade, the court says the exact opposite, that the Constitution protects a pregnant woman's right to have an abortion without restriction by the government. It is the literal antithesis of what Abbott is saying here, in case you are wondering the degree to which this guy is willing to gaslight the people who listen to him. And beyond that, despite the barrage of talking points, let's just remember here, this is not a mother and a child, this is a woman and a non-viable embryo. It doesn't even become a fetus until the 10th week, but Republicans know that using the proper term undermines their desperation to make it sound like a fully formed baby. And beyond that, despite these bills and laws being predicated on a fetal heartbeat, that's actually not the case at 6 weeks. And don't take it from me because I'm not an OBGYN, the same way that Greg Abbott is not an OBGYN. You should, however, take it from OBGYNs. And according to the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, quote, what is interpreted as a heartbeat in these bills is actually an electrically induced flickering of a portion of the fetal tissue that will become the heart as the embryo develops. Thus, ACOG does not use the term heartbeat to describe these legislative bans on abortion because it is misleading language, out of step with the anatomical and clinical realities of that stage of pregnancy. There's also a consensus in this literature that the valves of the heart aren't even fully formed until the 9th to 10th week of gestation, thereby further proving the extent to which these heartbeat bills are predicated on a scientifically false premise. The simple fact beyond all of these bad faith talking points trotted out by the right is that this law is an attack on women who exercise their constitutional right to an abortion in this country. It's an attack on the very concept of individual freedoms, which Republicans love to screech about until the very moment they can insert themselves between a woman and her doctor. Republicans aren't actually interested in individual freedom, they're interested in imposing their own far-right theological agenda on people and selling that to you as individual freedom. This is the same party that spent the decade after 9/11 skating to power on promises of fighting back against Sharia law, who are now legislating solely based on their interpretations of the Bible. Notice the similarities? If these Texas Republicans had their priorities in order, maybe they'd focus these punitive measures on the rapists instead of their victims. But the fact that they don't tells you everything you need to know. This is a party that's gone off the cliff, that would rather vilify rape and incest victims than even bother asking them what they want. And even though this is an issue that 70% of Americans oppose, still that hasn't stopped this far-right minority from forcing it upon the people that they represent. And it'll continue to get worse in every state across the US where Republicans hold power. So if you don't want women to live in a country where a few old men can dictate women's healthcare decisions, then make sure you vote. Because so long as Republicans stay in power, they are showing you what they're willing to do with it. To see more videos like this, click the subscribe button right here on this screen. And if you want to support my work, subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. I cover the most important stories each week, and my guest is always one of the top political figures, including Vice President Kamala Harris, Jen Psaki, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Nancy Pelosi, Katie Porter, Cory Booker, and so many more. The podcast link is also right here on this screen, so give it a listen and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.